where we have been. We have been just walking through the book of First Corinthians. And just to give you a quick little snapshot of this, you remember this, that Corinth was a huge major city. It was really a center of the socio-economic, philosophical center of the world, or the region at that particular time. But it was a city that was known for its moral reprehensibleness, if that is a word. And Paul came in and he said, listen, it's in the middle of this city that we need to plant a church. You people actually need Jesus. And so he plants a church there. He stays for what we think is about a year before moving on. He starts to hear that the Corinthians are having a bit of a problem learning what it means to actually live as Christians within this church. As this word comes to him, he decides to write a letter back to them. And so we have seen so far in chapters 1 through 5 that these are some of the problems that they have been engaging on. And I've got to tell you this, we've seen some problems happen in these first 5 chapters, but this is the thing that really gets me, because as I begin to really lean into this, and this is really the blessing of having to preach. When you have to preach, I've got to do double the work and I've got to do double the digging into a scripture. And I'm seeing things that I have never really seen before in First Corinthians, which is part of the job and one of the blessings of having to preach. And I got to tell you this, as I've been digging into this, I'm looking at this Corinthian church, and some of us may think this, that those ancient people and those ancient churches might have been more spiritual than us. Well, the truth is, they're not. And in fact, if we are to guide ourselves or use this church really as a model, I think I could be as bold to say this. I think as a church, we're doing better than these Corinthians. But I'll also say this: if we take our foot off the gas, we'll be right where they are. So here's what we're seeing today. We're seeing the next issue that they have got to lean into, and it's this: that you've got Christians that are actually defrauding and wronging other Christians within the church when they're taking this wrong and they're actually suing one another over it. And Paul is like, "What are you guys doing? You can't be doing that. First of all, you can't be defrauding each other. You're Christians. It's a terrible witness. But here's the thing: when you start suing each other over this and doing lawsuits, you're actually putting the Christian work out there to be judged under the regular secular law, and it's a terrible witness for what this church is and for Christianity. Because make no mistake, you're supposed to be living above the world. And even though we're in the world, there's still a place of where we don't become of the world. So he says we've got to deal with this. So we're talking about today lawsuits. We're talking about when we get into disputes. Now here's the thing. As we start digging into this, Paul's really going to, I know this, that some of us may be familiar. Maybe some of us have been in lawsuits before, and some of us maybe have not been in lawsuits. I'll tell you this, the last thing that I want to do is being engaging the legal system. Thank God I haven't had to be able to do it, or haven't done it yet. But as a result of that, Paul is really beginning to press, and this is, as he expounds on this, he's really pressing in 3 things. And I want to give you 3 things. We're not going to walk through these step by step, but I just want to give you them and just sit with them and think of them as questions that are going to get answered as we begin to make our way through this scripture. And what he really wants to press on us is this. First of all, how we handle situations when we come into a place of where we've got some kind of suing event that happens in our lives. How are believers supposed to handle it? And how we handle it, too, comes from this: the worldview of which we approach it with. So you know this. As a Christian, there are 2 worldviews that you can live in, or we'll say mindsets. There's the heaven mindset, where we're learning the ways of God and letting them live out, or the earthly mindset, which is what the earth says is right and wrong. And there are 2 mindsets in which we are called to live, either the heaven or the earth, and we are called to live in the heaven one. But here's the most important thing that I want to press on you. He's really pressing this. You've got to be guided by a biblical mindset, because when you're guided by a biblical mindset, it puts this world into its proper perspective. So we're going to lean into those 3 things. I'm not going to answer them directly, but you'll get the answers as we go through that. We're talking about how to handle situations as a believer, how to get a biblical mindset, and how that puts things into proper perspective. With that said, go to Scripture. Paul writes, Jesus says, when one of you has a grievance against another, does he dare go to law before the unrighteous instead of the saints? Or do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And if the world is to be judged by you, are you incompetent to try trivial cases? Do you not know that we are to judge angels? How much more, then, in matters pertaining to this life? So if you have such cases, why do you lay them before those who have no standing in the church? I say this to your shame. Can it be that there is no one among you wise enough to settle a dispute between the brothers, but brother goes to law against brother, and therefore before believers? To have lawsuits at all with one another is already a defeat for you. Why not rather suffer wrong? And why not rather be defrauded? So you yourselves wrong and defraud, even your own brothers. Pray with me. Father, as we come before your word this morning, I simply pray this. Lord, remind us what it means to have a biblical worldview. Show us those ways in which we are all too often guided by an earthly mindset. Father, write your principles so deep inside of us that we're just not reminded of them, that we live them. Father, we need you. We come here on Sunday morning not to be made or to feel guilty. We come to be reminded of what you have done for us, and as a result of that, how we are called to reflect your way of life through our lives. So, Father, I pray, let that find good soil this moment. Put your word and implant it so deep inside of us. Water it, grow it, give it the sun and the air and the light that is needed, so that, Father, as we live out and confess this on Sunday, we actually live it out Wednesday. Father, I pray, teach us and speak. I pray this in your name, in Jesus Christ, and all God's children say. All right, let's just go to verses 1 through 3. We're going to unpack these. So get in front of your scripture and let's just look at it, what it says again. When one of you has a grievance against another, does he dare go to law before the unrighteous instead of the saints? Or do you not know that the saints will judge the world? And if the world is to be judged by you, are you incompetent to try trivial cases? Do you not know that we are to judge angels? How much more, then, in matters pertaining to this life? So you can pick this up. Now here's what we got. When we're talking about a grievance here, what he is actually talking about is that you have wronged your brother, or there is a place of where a brother or sister in Christ has wronged you. And when we're talking about lawsuits, let's be very clear. We're not talking about criminal, we are talking about civil. Criminal, of course, is where we have done something that actually warrants going to jail and serving some kind of time in prison. But civil usually has to do with business. Civil usually has to do where you've wronged somebody. Civil has to do with usually how you have defrauded somebody or you have been defrauded and you need to get some kind of recompense to get that whole thing back. So when he is leaning into this, he's also not leaning into believers dealing with unbelievers because let's face it, they're operating from a completely different standard than we are. But what he is talking about is believers suing believers. Now, these grievances, let's be clear, these are bigger. These aren't just things like somebody hurt my feelings and now I need to give forgiveness to them. These are a place of where you have really been wronged. And just to give you an example of this, I don't know if you know this, but years ago, Kathy and I, my wife, we lived over in Orangeburg. And back in 2019, we wanted to downsize. And we found found a great little house over in St. Matthews on a small plot of land, and we knew that we were going to have to renovate it, and so we started that whole process in 2019 and ended up moving into it in 2020. Now, one of the things that when you move out in the country like we did, and we're really just the same distance that we were from the church that we were when we were in Orangeburg, but here's the thing: we moved from going to city water and we ended up going to well water. Now, if you're familiar with this, sometimes when you go to well water, they've got this what's called hard water, and I've gotten a whole education on hard versus soft water. Now, I got to be honest, when we start talking about hard water, it didn't really dawn on me. I could care less. But I've got two women that live in my house. I've got my wife and now an 18-year-old girl that's about to go off to college. And this is what I quickly found out, that hard water hurts your hair. Did you know that? Okay, those who have ever been in hard water, it makes it bristly and stuff like that. And so the truth is I was like, okay, well, it's that I'm losing my hair anyway. I don't really care on this whole thing, right? But here's the thing: I know this: if Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So guess what we're doing? We got to rectify the situation. So I call a couple of guys over, and or I call a couple of folks for a recommendation, and end up landing on this one particular guy to put in a water softener system. Now, those things, they ain't cheap. They cost a couple of $1,000s, and to come over and to hook them up and to do all this kind of stuff. Really nice guy. He put it in and got everything working. But here's what happened: 2 days later, it stopped working. So I did what anybody would do: I started calling him. Well, I called him and I left him a message. No response. I waited a day and I was like, okay, I called him again, and this time I left a text. No response. And so I did this for about 3 or 4 weeks, of where I was calling and I was calling and leaving voicemails and leaving texts, and it became evident that this guy was not going to respond back to me. And here's the thing: I even searched for other companies; maybe they could come over and actually fix this water softener system. But this is what I found out: people ain't going to work on another person's water softener system. They're only going to do their system, and they would be more than happy to rip this system out and put their own in, which means now I'm going to spend what, a couple of more $1,000s. So at this place, I mean, I called everybody. I called the water, and we found out this: the water system is really, it is one that is not widely adopted throughout the U.S. So at this point, I begin to come to a realization: you know what? Holy moly, this guy put a defective system in, and now he has gone AWOL. I felt defrauded. I felt wrong. And what Paul is talking about, we ended up getting resolution. It took about a year, but we ended up finally getting some kind of resolution. I got him back out there. But here's the thing: when Paul's talking about this, he's not talking about somebody hurt my feelings. He's talking about a place of where you're wrong. You're out of money. Real issues, hard issues like that. And when somebody wrongs you, the best thing, if you're like me, you want to get it fixed, right? Because what are you going to do? And Paul is now talking about, wait a minute, you shouldn't be suing people? Well, wait a minute. How am I going to get my money back? And to tell you the truth, the last thing that we actually started thinking about was suing. The last thing I want to do is start entering into the legal system and going through that whole machinery and that whole process. It didn't even come to our mind. But what do you actually do? And this is what Paul says when you come into a situation like this. And look what he says in verse 7, because these are really hard words. If you jump down to this, notice what Paul says. He says, wouldn't it just be rather to be wronged? Wouldn't you rather just be defrauded? No! There's nobody that wants to be wronged or defrauded. Paul, you crazy. You don't know what you're talking about, right? Let's dig into this. What Paul is really condemning here is, first of all, yes, you got brother, Christian brother, defrauding Christian brother, which begins to betray that the whole gospel element, and it is that Christ is not really moving from the center or moving from our head down into the heart of where he becomes the center of our lives, but Christ is really this. He's on the fringe of life. And if you ever run into one of these guys, I've run into this several times. They'll go to church with you, then they'll go into the business world, and they'll do you dirty in the business world, and they'll actually say this: well, it's just business. way to kind of excuse and divorce that. And what it really shows is the things of Christ have not descended down into the heart, and we're not living our lives according to that. But what Paul is saying is here is that if you are a Christian and you get wronged, why would you want to do this? Why would you want to go get judged by an unrighteous judge, which is another word for an unbeliever? This is a man who is going to be guided, or a person who is going to be guided by what the world says is right or wrong. Or wouldn't you rather be judged by a saint, which is another word for a believer? Before we unpack that and before we do this, let's take another look and let's go back into verse 2 and look at what Paul says about being judged. And notice what he says here. We have the right to judge the world as a believer, and we have the right to judge angels. You know this. First of all, when we're talking about judge, let's start to really ramp in the seriousness of what Paul's talking about here. In the first century, this is honestly what we're talking about here. I don't know that it can be fully impressed and fully taken in the 21st century in American Christians. But in the first century, and even some of our Indian Christian brothers and sisters who are with us, and if you're not familiar with this, here in this church, we have got a contingent of Indian Christians, Indian from the actual country of India. And make no mistake, Christianity over there is one that is persecuted. So they get connected with other Christians. That's their lifeline of actually trading and bartering and doing all things of life. And if we take ourselves back to first century Christianity in Corinth, remember this: that was the only church in town. So here's the thing: if you defrauded your brother in the church, what you're actually going to be doing is you're going to have to sit with that guy Sunday in and Sunday out. And if there's a place of where you two hate each other, you're going to start tearing at the very fabric and the very unity of the church. That is completely different from American 21st century, where if somebody makes you mad in this church, all you have to do is just pick up and go to the next church down the road. You with me? For the first century Christians and even for Indian Christians, man, that's all you got. That's your lifeline. You've got no other place to run. You've got to deal with the conflict and you've got to do it in a right way. Unfortunately for American Christianity, we have so many opportunities of churches you can run and never fully lean into the problem that needs to be addressed, which means all it's going to do is manifest itself at the next place. Yes? So why? For them, why do you want to tear at the very fabric of the church? Why would you want to have a non righteous person, an unbeliever, judge you by the law? Because here's the thing: you're going to be guided either by your earthly mindset or the worldly mindset. The judge here, he's going to be guided by whatever culture says it's acceptable. And let me tell you, culture is never a good indication of what is right or is wrong. Only the law of God is. Culture changes. You know this. If you were to be judged in the 1800s, that was a politically different environment than we live in now. There's a place of where slavery was an accepted practice. And so whenever judgments happen by a judge that is adjudicating the actual cultural law, there's a place of where that's taken into account. Well, that's completely different from what God says here, and you don't want to be judged according to that standard. Not only that, it's a terrible, terrible witness. Let me just take a minute. Let me just take a minute and actually show you the differences between being judged according to the law and according to the unrighteous and what God's law says. And the best way to do that is just to simply go back to Matthew chapter 5. This is what is known as the Beatitudes. And in the Beatitudes, they're short little pithy statements that Jesus gives us that actually teaches us how we are called to live. And I just want to show you the difference between the worldly mindset and the heavenly mindset. This is what Jesus says in Matthew 5, verse 4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Well, in a biblical mindset, it means this. It means to mourn means to actually mourn our sin. It means that we have grown so close to God that we have actually learned to like what He likes, love what He loves, and hates what He hates so much that it's made its way from our head that it's not just just something that we know now, but it is making its way down into the recesses of our heart that is guiding everything that we do and every decision that we make. And when we sin against the things of God, there's a place of where you feel it and you mourn it. And there's a place of where you want to live for God. And that means having a heart that is more sensitive to the places that are not, which begs a question that Jesus is saying. Are you in a place of where you are growing to mourn the actual sin? Do you know when you sin? Are you able to see it and able to feel it and able to say, oh my gosh, I hate this about myself? Well, I'm going to tell you what, the world doesn't. They could, nobody cares about that. The world is about get what's mine. You ready? How about another one? Jesus says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. You know what meek is? It means humble. Well, I do know this. In an earthly mindset, you end up in court, usually civil court. It's usually about one of three things. It's going to be money, power, or slander. Somebody has wronged me or hurt my reputation. Something like that that's always going. But if an earthly mindset says this, well, what do you mean? It means that I need to be meek and that I need to be humble. It does not mean that I am going to let somebody walk all over me, but what it does mean is this, that when somebody hurts my feelings or speaks ill or speaks bad about me, I'm not going to sue them and I'm not going to try to sue their company, but instead, I'm not going to be a litigious person, but instead, I'm going to know exactly whose I am and rely in understanding that I know that I am Jesus' and I am not defined by what the world says is acceptable or not. You with me? A meek and a humble person says, I know that material possessions are important, but they're not going to be my end all be all. I'm not going to sue people if they are wronged or taken from me because I understand that my true heaven and my true treasure is in heaven, and that's what I'm looking for. You with me? Now, don't tell me that's easy. Don't tell me that that's an easy mindset to move from an earthly to a heavenly one. Or how about this? You ready? Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Righteousness means this, a right standing before God. It means taking on the very things of God. I am learning to like what He likes, love what He loves, hate what He hates, and not living according to the ways of the world that actually promotes those things. And I'll give you an example of this. And this is it's one of the probably the most poignant, most egregious examples that I have ever witnessed in my life. It was jarring when I actually heard this. So, living according to the righteous, this is what God's word says. Love your enemy. Don't tell me that's easy. Somebody is trying to wrong you. And I still remember the day, and I know that this is going to get on some people's nerves, right, when I say this. But I still remember watching part of the funeral of Charlie Kirk when he died, and Trump got up and he said this from in front of everybody. This is a place where Charlie and I disagree. He says, love your enemies and forgive. I hate my enemies and I want to destroy them. Now, listen, I'm not saying that to bring politics into the center, but what I am saying is this: never, ever let a human or a political system guide the way you think or operate. As a Christian, always remember that you are part of a citizen. You are a citizen of heaven first and foremost, and we follow His way and His righteousness. And the only proper place for a Christian is not to look for a human political party to walk in your values, but to actually let those values live out as you allow the righteousness of God to move into your heart and let them out. And I know that means sometimes calling into question some of the things that we see in this world. And this is why, listen, this is why Christianity is hated. Because you start stepping on the toes of people in their political party, I know this, people start to bristle. Let's do one more and we're done. You'll see the difference here. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they're called the sons of God. You know what a peacemaker is? Jesus says this. Peacemaker is someone who is trying to make peace, emotional peace, or even peace in all kinds of ways. And it means that we're not threatening people. It means that we're not doing this or that. And it means that actually, what is the opposite of peace? War. Now, I'll tell you this right now. I'm more qualified than some of you to actually talk about war because I have sat over there in Iraq and Afghanistan when I was in the Army, and I have seen some brutal, awful, ugly stuff. And anyone that thinks that war should be not be avoided in anything, way, shape, or form, let me tell you, not when you see somebody dying in front of you. Forgive me, I'm pointing. But I know that for some of us, we're going to disagree with what I'm saying right now. Probably going to get a call this week. Let's talk about it. Because here's what I do know, and I hope that you start seeing the seriousness of this. Paul is saying here there's a difference between the way of God and the way of the world. And if we're defrauding each other as Christians and we are not bringing that, and we are bringing that in front of unrighteous people, we are actually putting God under the world instead of putting the world under God. And as soon as you start doing that, you're going to mess everything up. And just to press this point home, this is what he says too. Remember, saint, believer, you are able to judge the world. You are able to judge the demons, the fallen angels. Let me fast forward and tell you what I'm talking about there. When Paul says that, he's actually digging into future times to come. And it goes all throughout Revelation. And so I'm going to give you a quick snapshot of the book of Revelation. And always remember this, it's revelation, it's not revelations. That's more of a pet peeve for me than anything on that, but it's revelation. And so here's the deal. If you want the whole book, here's the snapshot. It means that the apocalypse is going to happen, that God is going to take up the believers. There's going to be a contingent that is left. The tribulation is going to happen where God pours out wrath upon wrath, and it is a bad, bad time for a lot of people there. But there's going to be a war in heaven, and in that moment, the heavenly angels actually win. They bind the fallen, or they bind the rebellious angels. They throw them out. Now they're fallen angels. These are the demons. They are bound unto the heaven, and there is going to be one day where the millennial kingdom comes back. God will meld heaven and earth. Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem, will be the center. God will reign, of where there will be no more nations, there will be no more states, there will not be any human leaders, only God will be the leader. And one of the ways that he is going to administer his justice is through men or women who know his way, who know his mindset, who know his laws, to know how he operates, to know all of his stuff. They will judge others. And not only that, there will be a place of where the angels will be unbound, the demons, and we will judge them. And so, what he is saying here is this: press in and make sure you know this, saint, that your faith comes with responsibility. And it is to lean into that responsibility. It is to learn more of his way, to like what he likes, love what he loves, and hate what he hates. We just don't move forward and make church an add on in our lives. It becomes central. So here's the thing, if we understand that, surely we can judge trivial matters like if somebody's been defrauded. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel prepared to actually judge others in a life to come? If you're like me, I'm going to tell you this: nope. But we leaned in anyway because we remember this. This is important. You're a saint. Oh, if we would only see ourselves the way that God sees us. You know what a saint is? I throw that word out there with much trepidation. I throw it out there with much chagrin because I know this. As soon as I say the word saint, many of us have this image of Mother Teresa or this guy or gal that's got everything together. They really do experience all of the love, joy, peace, patience, all the fruit of the Spirit that you see on the window there, and they are so kind and they are so loving, so much so that they're almost unapproachable. Yes? Well, the truth is, that's not what a saint is. You know what a saint is? A saint's a guy or a gal that understands they ain't got it together. And just imagine for a minute that you are going to be judged from God. You've died from this life. You are now standing before God. And as you are standing before God to be judged, just imagine that He says this. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if when I get judged, I'm not going to be able to utter a thing. I'm going to be down on my face in the awe of God, just worshiping and saying, "Oh my gosh, please, this is a terrible, terrible, troubling thing to be in the very presence of God. It is terrifying." And I am sure that if God asked me this question, "Judd, why should I let you into my heaven?" You want to know what the answer is not going to be? It will not be this: "God, you should let me in because I've done so many works in your name." You know what? I was a minister. I responded to the call that you gave me. There was a place of where I allowed myself and I dug deeper into your word and I enjoyed it and I let it come out. Father, I have ministered. I've preached in your name. God, I've actually gone out and I've helped disciple people in your name. And I've seen the fruit of that, of where now their lives are changed as a result. Father, I have spoken in your name, preached in your name, taught in your name, done all kinds of ministry in your name. And you know what He is going to look at me when I say exactly that? "Depart from me, for I never knew you." Because your works, even the best works that you give, are stained with that awful thing called sin, and they are an abomination in my sight. You do not make it in. Depart from me. I never knew you. Forgive me, but if you think that when you will be judged, there is some great scale of where your hope and your good outweighs your bad, you're not in Christianity. Because here's what happens in the judgment. Here's how a saint makes it in. The saint comes to God and says, "God, there is nothing that I can do to prove myself right to you. Father, I've done all of these things in your name, and they count for nothing because each one that I did still did and was stained by the very sin that is in me. And Father, forgive me. I cannot even in a million years imagine why I should come into your world. And in fact, here's the thing: if you do cast me into hell, I deserve it. But you, because you have loved me, decided to come from heaven on high. You came down to the world, and this is what you did. You taught me what it means to live for you through Jesus, and you went to the cross. And through the same Holy Spirit that you have put inside of me, that has given me the faith, is the same Holy Spirit that was Jesus on the cross. And because my sin deserves death, you took that death penalty off of me and you put it on you, on your Son. And as a result of that, I am now free from the taint of sin. But what makes it even better, Lord, is that now you have imputed, you have imparted, you have thrust upon me, you have given me your righteousness, the righteousness of Christ. And the only reason that I am allowed into heaven, the only reason you should let me in, Father, is not because of anything that I have done, but only because you thrust that righteousness upon me without me asking, without me deserving it. I get to make it in, Father, because of grace. That's it. That's the gospel. That's the judgment. And let the weight, listen, the weight of that needs to sit on the Christian's heart and change us and stretch us and challenge us and grow us. And when that weight sits on your heart, there's a place of where now you start to see the seriousness of what Paul is talking about here. First, why would we defraud anyone? Second of all, if we do or we get defrauded, why would we take it to an unrighteous judge? When God has given us the church to help us work through those things. Now, I know some of you are saying, "Whoa, whoa, 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 let's step back for a minute." Because I know some of you are saying, and this is where we start coming in front of first or 21st century American Christianity. I know that some of you are saying, well, wait a minute, what does that mean, Judge? Judd, does that mean that I'm supposed to put my business in front of other people in the church? I don't know about you, but I don't want my business to be known by other people. Here's what I'm saying. First century Christianity, Indian Christianity, where you have got nothing else and this is all you've got, and you can't run down to the next church down to the road, you start to see just how prime church should be in a Christian's life. That it's not just an add-on that we do to life, but there's a place of where you are engrafted with other brothers and sisters, and there's a place of where you are getting connected with other brothers and sisters in such a way that you are literally doing life with them. And when there is a problem, surely there's somebody in a church. I mean, he says it in verse 4, right? Surely there's somebody in a church who is smart enough to actually help us with those folks or help us with those problems. So, verse 4, if you have such cases, why do you lay them before those who have no standing in the church? I say this to your shame. Can it be that there is no one among you wise enough to settle a dispute between brothers? Surely there's somebody in the church that can help mitigate and adjudicate problems. We call those people elders. Elders are people that have enough spiritual depth, that have enough life experience, that have enough understanding of the things of God to help us work through those problems. What Paul is saying is that's who you go to. Those are the folks that you lean into. And I'm sure that Paul is really saying this for two reasons. One, it's the spiritual thing to do. But two, and this is probably going to resonate with more people than the first one, it's cheaper. Did y'all get that? Believers work with believers, which means there is a place of where we should be leaning in so deep into the church, into connecting with people that they can actually speak into our lives. Let me tell you, or let me ask you, are you? Or is this a place that's just an add on to your life? One more thing I want to press here. Let's get to the answer. So we've seen this so far. I'm switching gears here. So we've seen this so far. We've seen that he's telling us who we are. You're a saint, and as a result of that, you live accordingly. He's telling us that we must work and adopt towards to having a biblical mindset. But let me show you this, because this is the most important thing. That when you do adopt a biblical mindset, it changes how you interpret life. Verse 7, why not rather suffer wrong? Why not rather be defrauded? Are you kidding me? How can you ask a question like that? Be defrauded and wronged? Of course, nobody wants this. You mean I'm supposed to endure a wrong and endure being defrauded? Years ago, when I was a younger man, when I was about, it was 31, I remember this principle really getting written into my heart in a major way. And when I was 31, this was right out. Most of you, I don't know if you know this, but my career has been this. I started off in the Army and then I went into the business world, and I really enjoyed the business world. In fact, my family knows this, and some of y'all know this too, that if I wasn't in ministry, I'd be convinced that right now I'd be in economics in some way, shape, or form. I just enjoy that, and I enjoy understanding how companies move and work and how they operate and actually affect the world around us. It's a very interesting thing for me. So when I was 31 and I graduated seminary, I made my way as an associate pastor for a year over to a big Presbyterian church, First Presbyterian Church in, or I'm sorry, Eastminster Presbyterian Church in Columbia. Now, while I was there, one of the things that I knew this is that I needed to grow deeper. And although I'm a minister and I've got all this technical training on theology and all these different things, there was still a place of where I was a young man and I didn't know how to practically walk it out. And so what I did is I actually walked up to a couple of guys, and we've been pressing into this. I'll tell you where I first learned this. I learned because I walked up to some businessmen, some Christian businessmen in their 50s and 60s, and I literally said this: "Hey, you look interesting. Can I take you to lunch?" And you know what they said? Yes. I've never had anybody say no to that actual question. And so they said, absolutely. And they got a kick out of it because here's this young guy that's supposed to know all this theology, but they know that I don't even know, that I don't know what in the world that I'm doing, and that I need to apply this to real life. So I remember befriending one of the guys, and he was a small business owner. He probably had about 75 to 100 employees. And it was a family owned business, and he got to know all of his employees and all the family in a big way. And so there was a place where they started to see that some of the bottom line of the numbers was not working out. So they did some kind of investigation, and they found out that over the course of about 3 years, one of the employees was embezzling $75,000 away from, in total, away from the business. Now, if you're a small business, that's a big sum of money. And so he knew this guy's family and he couldn't understand why it was happening. And so he did what he had to do. He fired the guy, of course, but there was a place of where he could have chosen to prosecute this man and try to get some of the money back. But he knew this, that if he tried to get the money back, and let me tell you, this wasn't where he just had $75,000 to write off and to move forward. This actually hurt the business, and they had to change doing some things in order to do this. And but he knew this, that if he tried to prosecute this guy, one, this guy deserved it, but two, he probably wouldn't get the money, and any money that did come back into him would hurt his wife and his kid that he was sure they didn't understand. They knew what this guy was doing. So he decided to not prosecute. And I remember asking him, I sat there and I said, well, listen, I know the biblical understanding of this, that we don't get into lawsuits and all this. And oh, by the way, let us always remember that when Paul is talking about a lawsuit here, he's talking believer to believer, not believer to non-believer. We didn't know if this guy was a non-believer or not. I don't know. But this, I remember what he said. He said, well, I'm not going to prosecute. So I asked him, why? Why wouldn't you prosecute and try to get that money back? And I'll remember one of the biggest litanies of things that I've ever heard in my life that actually changed the course of how I approach life. And he said this, well, why would I? Do you know how many times I have wronged God? Do you know how many times I've wronged him by not allocating my time correctly, that I have gone and done all the things that I have wanted to do and have not given the time back to him that he deserves? Do you know how many times I have defrauded him of money? I mean, let's think about it. There was a time of when I was in the church and I knew that I was supposed to tithe, but I did not tithe. And then when I did start tithing, I only tithed about 7% just to kind of convince myself I'm starting to do it, when the truth is that the tithe is 10% of your income. And even when I did start tithing, and even when I started do tithing a little bit more over the 10%, it was still like pulling those dollars from a begrudging fist. Do you know how much I have defrauded God on this? Do you know how much I have failed to pray and wronged him by leaning into myself instead of going to God and actually asking God to work in my life and in my faith? Do you know how many times I have mocked the cross of Christ by not living for him and doing the very thing that I don't want to do and not do the very thing that I should do? Do you know how many times I've made a mockery of my faith and not seen some of the correction and the discipline and the hard times that have come in my life and responded to them as a father would discipline his son, knowing that God loves me and wants to grow me through some of those hard times? Do you know how many times? How many times I have allowed sin to take over my life. And once I mourned it and figured out this is sin in my life, how many times I have failed to come to God and ask for confession and get back right with God and experience his joy? If God prosecutes me for half the stuff I've done, I will not stand. Have I mocked the very mercy that Christ has shown me by not prosecuting me, but showing me grace? And now I have so much pride to try to get money back? And then he said something that shocked me. It's easy to say on Sunday, but it ain't easy to say on Wednesday. It's just money. This is what I know. God calls us to live with a worldly mindset or a heavenly mindset as opposed to a worldly mindset. And when we labor for that, when we strive for that, when we do whatever we can do to get that, it actually changes our perspective. And if the world is all that we have, every small problem will look like a mountain. And if we're grounded in the here and now, earthly matters just aren't large, they're everything. But if we are grounded in a biblical worldview, the mountains of this life look like they actually are pebbles in the shoe of a citizen of heaven. As you leave this morning and as we now enter into a time of prayer, into a time of response, listen, here's some questions to ask. Am I really pursuing a mindset, a heavenly mindset of God? Am I leaning into that? Are some of these world's problems a mountain to me when the truth is if I just change my perspective to the perspective of Jesus, they become pebbles? As we come to this time of prayer, don't just sit there and don't just sing. Take a moment before Jesus and reflect. If you're like me and there's a place where your mindset and your worldview needs to be reminded that it is God's, then we ask God, God, through the power of your Holy Spirit, change the way I think. God, through the power of your Holy Spirit, change my heart. God, for only what you can do, because I cannot change my own heart. Father, I pray, change